My computer went. What? Are we good? What are you doing? What? Oh, we got to go live. See, I guess by the third day of doing things, at least we didn't break an HDMI cable. So much better than the first year. So a few folks have asked, how do I get in Slack, whatnot? Underneath your profile, there's a button. Hit the button. It does the connection for you, whatnot. Nothing big. More importantly, we're going to leave. Some of you may leave a little early, but how many people in here have been to open spaces? Nice. There's still a whole day of stuff going on. So, and none of this stops when we leave today. You can easily go to the website, hit the little plus button, pick out the event. The daily is just the daily grind for all of us. Put your stuff in and we go. Like, you can do that any day of the year. Oh, I just said that again and again. I know a bunch of folks signed up for Telegram. Cool, we'll try it. Make sure you sign up for our newsletter. There's no magic there. Sometimes we slide in your spam, so check your spam. And before we get into meat of things, go buy some of my coffee. I know you all drink coffee. We got some stuff over there. Help us clear it out. It helps support everything. Coffee's a passionate thing for me, just like barbecue. We've been proud to work with Mill City and Scott and everybody to do that. So if you're into coffee, go buy a bag. All right. So I started this morning with you all stepped out. So I want to tell you a story about a person who stepped out. Believe it or not, I don't send all the emails that you think I send to you. I do have a little piece of software that runs and does it on my behalf because there's a lot of you, which is fantastic. But as part of signing up, we have a bit of a campaign that says, hey, how was your first time? Do you have any feedback for us, whatnot? Well, this person reached out. They submitted to speak. And this person is Tonya. She submitted to speak. She got one of our kind of drip campaigns, and she responds back, and she gives a ton of feedback. So we start chatting, and we start chatting more. We find out we live next to one another. We find out that we have a lot of things in common. We find out that we're both running businesses on the side, and we step out, and we step out, and we step out. And today she's on stage because she stepped out. That's how it started. And I say that because there's nothing special about this stage. There's nothing special about the things that we do. I'm not undermining what we do. But a little extra effort, a little thing, you never know where it may take you. Now, I get up here and I tell you we want to have inspirational, motivational keynotes and that kind of stuff, but I also want to make us aware of things that are going on in the world around us. I want to get rid of some of the fear, the hype, the FUD, if you will. One of the things for us, one of my next big rocks with that.us, is getting better, or starting to even do, things like artificial intelligence and machine learning so that I can better connect you in a session with the folks that have that knowledge, right? And the reality is, that stuff is all around us today. Monday, Brandon was talking about the trough of disillusionment, right? AI's been around for a long time. There's AI that we see kind of robots taking over the world in Boston Dynamics and just crazy kind of things happening. And then there's the reality of the things that are actually going on today, where it's practically being used and how. Now, my family is a huge soccer family. Love soccer. The correct football. I had to throw out one NFL joke. Go Bears. I want it. Give it to me. This is the year. This is the year. I don't even know who's coaching the team anymore. Doesn't matter. Go Dicka. So that person that stepped out turned out is an artificial intelligence, a Python developer. an ex-WNBA basketball player, an entrepreneur. And the intersection of all those things, and those things for me were super important, that we had this opportunity to talk about where is AI, in a particular thing that we all know about. Whether you like sports or not, you certainly know about sports. You can't not know about it here in a few weeks. The NFL is going to spend bazillions of dollars making sure that you know something. And whether your sport is banging out code or watching people throw stuff into the end zone, this AI thing is around us everywhere we go and all the things we do. So with that, let's invite Tonya to the stage. Give her a big round of applause.
I'm good. Thank
I
you.
don't know, are you?
Yeah, I think I am.
You got this. You got to do the flippity flip with the flip, flip, flip. You know, just switch to HDMI cables. Just go bloop. I love giving these guys a hard time.
There we go. Hey everyone, thank you, Clark, for the wonderful introduction. Hey everyone, how you guys doing? Good, welcome to the last day of that conference. Today we're going to chat, like Clark was saying, about how artificial intelligence is transforming the world of professional sports. But first, let's clear the air. I am very tall, as you probably have noticed. I'm 6'3", and it was so funny when we were checking into the hotel on Sunday. There was this cute little boy with his mom, and he kept looking at my feet. Then he would look up, and he would look at my feet, and then he would look up, and I swear he thought I was standing on stilts. So I've always been pretty tall. When I was in 4th grade, I was already 5'4". By the time I was in 5th grade, I was 5'8". 6th grade grew to 5'9", and by the time I was in 7th grade, at the age of 13, I stopped growing at the age of 13 years old in 7th grade. And I was pretty much born with a basketball in my hands, right? I come from a sports family. My dad played basketball for the Air Force. My mom hurdled for the Air Force. My brother also played Division I basketball like myself. But growing up, I always wanted to play the sports for short people. I wanted to do gymnastics. My parents were like, nope, too tall. I wanted to get into dance, and they were like, no. Then I had this even wilder idea because I spent a lot of time in Kentucky with my mother's family, and we would go to the Kentucky Derby every year. And I wanted to be a sports jockey. They were like, nope, that would be pretty much impossible. And so I started playing competitive basketball at the age of 5. And the first team I ever played on was a team at the YMCA. It was an all-boys team. And you can imagine how cute that was, all these 5-year-olds running around with the basketball. But something happened around the age of 12 when I was in 6th grade. I was at visiting my pediatrician for just a regular exam. And my doctor says, he thinks he heard an irregular heartbeat. So he sent me to this cardiologist in Milwaukee. Saw this cardiologist, and thank goodness it was just a heart murmur. And I had this murmur because I was growing so fast. So the cardiologist says, I'm going to do an AI height projection chart on you, like a growth chart, to see when you'll stop growing. And he says, by the time you stop growing, you'll be 6'3". And so I remember coming home that evening and standing in my bedroom, and I had this dresser with a mirror on it, and I remember standing in that mirror, and I could only see my torso. I couldn't see my neck or my head because I was so tall, towering over my mirror, and I was like, wow, this is what 5'9" looks like. What is 6'3" going to look like? And I finally found out shortly thereafter that this is what 6'3" looks like. So there is this well-known action flick. Does anybody watch movies, action movies here? Cool. There's this well-known action flick that's based on artificial intelligence. And there's this famous quote from the movie, and if anybody can tell me what that is, I will give you a basketball. Oh man, who was first? I don't even know. Okay. Yes, it's from the Terminator 2, actually. Oh, oh awesome. Okay, good. Good job. I'm going to throw it out to you. Yeah, you're welcome. Yes, and so this line, I need your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle. I need your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle is from the movie Terminator 2. And it's so funny because this movie came out in like the mid-'80s, and I was like 5 years old when I saw it, which was rated R, but you could do crazy things like that back in the 1980s. Can't do those now so much. But in these Terminator movies, they center around artificial intelligence, and there's actually a hidden message about AI in these movies. So if you haven't seen the movie, or if you need a refresher, the premise of the movie is in the year 2029, there is this like evil AI company called Skynet, and they were building these Terminators. They were creating these Terminators, which were like AI operated, so they were like half machine, half human. And this evil AI company sent this Terminator back to the year 1984 on a mission to eliminate a woman named Sarah Connor, who, unbeknownst to her, she would one day have a son who would become the leader of a movement called the Human Resistance, which would one day get rid of this evil and stop this evil AI company. So the way the movie starts, in the first Terminator, the Terminator comes to Earth. He doesn't have any clothes on. He's like naked. He walks into a bar. Okay, I know that sounds like the beginning of a really bad joke. And he sees these like punk rocker guys, right? They have like spiky hair, purple hair, and he sternly says, "Give me your clothes." And the guys just kind of laugh at him, and the Terminator once again says, "Give me your clothes." And the Terminator ends up eliminating these punk rockers, and he takes their clothes, and he sets out on his mission to eliminate Sarah Connor. And there's a soldier named Reese who was also sent back to Earth to protect Sarah Connor. And so he finally convinces Sarah that he is there to protect her. And of course, they during the movie, they fall in love, Sarah and Reese, and they would one day have a son together who would be John Connor, the leader of the Human Resistance. But unfortunately, Reese, the soldier, ends up dying. And so Sarah's all alone on this journey, and she ends up terminating the Terminator. And Sarah ends up living, but the mission of the evil AI company is not complete because Sarah is still alive. And that's where Terminator 2 comes in. So in Terminator 2, it starts out in the year 1995, and Sarah Connor's son is now a teenager, and he's doing like teenage things, right? Like skateboarding and riding his bike and playing video games. But this evil AI company is at it again, and their mission this time is to kill John Connor, who would one day become the leader of the Human Resistance, who was the movement that was going to put this evil AI company out of business. So the way the movie starts, the Terminator comes to Earth, no clothes on. He walks into a bar, and he says, "I need your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle." And this guy is playing pool, right? And he's like, "What? Like, who is this guy? Like, get away from me." And so the Terminator once again says, "I need your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle." And so the Terminator kind of beats up the guy playing pool, and he takes his clothes, his boots, and his motorcycle. But this time he did not eliminate this man. He just kind of beat him up pretty bad. And so people were kind of confused, like watching the movie, like, "Oh, that's weird. Like, I thought the Terminator was supposed to like kill people, but this Terminator is now good because John Connor, Sarah Connor's son, reprogrammed this Terminator to be, quote unquote good, and sent him back in time to protect his younger self from this evil AI company." But there's a problem, a big problem. So this evil AI company created a newer model Terminator, and this Terminator was like on steroids. This Terminator could mimic voices, he could shapeshift. There's a scene where he turns into like liquid and turns into like this knife. And his mission is to kill John Connor. right? Because he was going to be the human resistance leader to put this evil AI company out of business. So along the way, as the old Terminator is protecting John during the mission, this old Terminator becomes, is experiencing more human emotions. He asks about crying, he asks about what are tears, and he even saves a dying man. And of course, the two Terminators face off. There's fight scenes and a big duel, and I don't want to spoil the movie for you if you haven't seen it, but I think most of you probably have seen the movie. It's a classic. So the message of this Terminator movies, especially Terminator 1 and 2, is if we're not careful, AI can definitely work against humans. So we need to be using AI for good, and we can use AI for good in sports. So once again, my name is Tonya Sims, and you can find me on Twitter at @TonyaSims there. So I'm a former professional athlete. I played pro in Europe and a little bit in the WNBA. I played basketball pretty much at all levels, from youth sports, college for the Wisconsin Badgers, and professionally. I was born and raised in Wisconsin, so you know which NFL team I cheer for. Go Pack Go. So when I was 7 years old, my parents bought a computer. That was back in the 80s, when computers were the size of elephants. And they bought a Texas Instrument, and I started coding in BASIC with, we had this manual that came with the computer, and it taught us, my brother and I, BASIC. So I started doing some of that when I was 7. But I was definitely not a whiz kid or anything, right? I didn't grow up and, for 30 years programming. I had to stop for a long time because my athletic career took off, and that is what put me through college. After I retired from sports, I went and worked in pharmaceutical sales. And pharmaceutical sales is very interesting, especially when I was doing it. And that was the time where you could take doctors out to play golf and take them out to fancy dinners to get them to prescribe your products. I remember my time as a pharmaceutical sales rep during it was phase 4 of my training. It was called, I had to do a preceptorship, which is where you would have to go in and watch a doctor do surgery. And I ended up passing out during the procedure because I don't like blood. So I knew it wasn't cut out for that field. And I wanted to do something more creative, more analytical, and I wanted to get into tech. So I moved to Chicago, and that's where I got my first job as a computer operator, swapping out tapes in a large data center. Then I taught myself how to code. I started with C#, moved to Java, did some Java in grad school. Then I got into Ruby on Rails, and then I finally landed on Python. For many different reasons, I stuck with Python, but mainly because of the supportive community. And now I'm a Python developer advocate at a company called Deepgram. We are an AI speech-to-text company, and we transcribe pre-recorded and real-time audio to text. So you may have figured out by now I'm a Zenio. Has anybody heard of the term Zenio? Yes, Zenio's in the house. So a Zenio is a hybrid of Generation X plus Millennial. So Gen X was the generation who listened to Run DMC and watched The Breakfast Club, and millennials may or may not have lived in their parents' basement after the age of 30. So I can definitely relate to both of those. And I would also like to say I do not have a fancy PhD in artificial intelligence or anything. I am just a software developer who has a passion for sports and AI. And I'm going to assume that no one here has any AI knowledge. I don't know what level everybody is here. So I'm just going to kind of keep it basic. So you may be wondering what prompted my passion for AI in sports. Something called the VO2 Max test, which is AI-driven. And it's the first day of basketball practice in college. The first 4 weeks before practice, you don't even touch a ball, you just do conditioning. And the first day of conditioning, they have you do this test called the VO2 Max test. Oh, by the way, that's not a picture of me. That's a picture of Mr. Stock Photo there, if you haven't noticed. So this VO2 Max test, what they do is they cover your mouth and your nose and they put you on a treadmill and you run until you can't breathe anymore, and then you hop off the treadmill when you can't breathe. And so the purpose of the VO2 max test is it's supposed to predict fitness level, and it predicts your athletic performance. And I liken it to being a Navy SEAL, or like the Navy SEAL training. They have this training called BUDS. I think it stands for like Basic Underwater Demolition SEALs Test. And they also call it Hell Week, where they have to stay underwater until they can't breathe anymore. It may not be as dangerous as Navy SEALs Hell Week, but it was definitely my own personal hell. So as I was saying, the first 4 weeks of conditioning, you don't touch a ball in college. And I remember my freshman year of college, I was so out of shape because I busted my ankle like the summer before. So my VO2 max was absolutely horrible. I only lasted like 30 seconds on the treadmill. And then over the course of that 4 weeks during conditioning, we would do activities to improve our VO2 max, like running, weights. We used to run the stairs at Camp Randall Football Stadium in Madison. We also used to run this ski hill called Black Hawk in Madison. So we would do activities like that, and then our conditioning coach would note our times and put them into a spreadsheet, and with the help of artificial intelligence, would predict our next VO2 max score. I'm happy to say that by the time I was a senior, my VO2 max was much better. I was in my early 20s, definitely was in very good shape. Then my 30s came. I was still in decent shape, but then my 40s came, and it's obviously much harder to stay in shape after the age of 40. So today we're going to explore AI use cases in sports so that you can possibly build something cool, maybe even start a company and build the next cool application in sports and artificial intelligence. So this is our game plan for today. The first thing we're going to just briefly cover is some unethical use cases for AI in sports, just because we don't want to repeat the same mistakes. We'll talk about some professional use cases in sports, right? Professional sports, it's very glamorous. And then college sports, we'll talk about something called NIL, or name, image, likeness, and talk about some AI solutions around there. So name, image, likeness is now, it's like a law that was passed where college athletes can now make money and profit off of their name, image, and likeness, and they're racking in the big dough right now. Then we'll go into youth sports. Does anybody have kids who play sports here? Okay, cool. Yeah, so youth sports, anything really K-5 to 12th grade. Here's a tip for people who have kids who play sports. College coaches recruit early. So for example, I was 13 when I started getting recruited by college coaches going into my 7th grade year. And lastly, we'll continue with some opportunities in sports and AI, which you might be interested in. We'll kind of focus on opportunities at all levels so you can build something cool if you want. Okay, I'm sure everybody here has seen unethical cases of artificial intelligence, whether or not it is in sports. So I'm going to share some unethical AI in sports use cases with you, because we shouldn't repeat, history, I guess, especially if it's something bad that has happened. And of course, I don't want to get dragged on Twitter, so I feel like it's my duty to cover this. So unethical use case, data privacy, for example. So there's large databases collecting data of athletes, and athletes are at risk of data breaches, and actually we all are now, especially with smart watches that monitor heart rate and can determine health issues, but they also may be life-saving as well. So we don't know what's happening to our data. Manipulating competitions and cheating, also an unethical use case of artificial intelligence. AI can help people cheat, unfortunately. Some athletes work hard their whole lives. Think of an Olympian who only gets to make it to the Olympics every 4 years. And so imagine how that would make them feel if their competitor was using AI to cheat and knocking them off the podium. Illegal sports betting. So some people even may argue that sports betting itself is unethical. Legal sports betting, it's like a $40 billion industry, and illegal sports betting is about a $1.7 trillion industry, and of course in the underground markets. And so AI is being used by criminals to launder money, and in my opinion, it strips the sport of something special that's supposed to be about fun, family, and positivity, and it's not setting a good example for our young athletes. Here are some ethical use cases, in my opinion, of artificial intelligence. So training preparation, which can be used at the professional, college, or the youth level. Enhancing performance, using AI to predict performance, using AI to increase endurance. Assisting coaches. Coaches are using AI now at all levels, mainly at the professional and the college levels though. AI is used to evaluate an athlete's skill level, analyze teams. AI is used to determine how teams work together. It's also used for real-time decision-making on player contribution, as well as predicting game time decision-making. Doping monitoring. We've all heard the story of Lance Armstrong, right? Like how he was doping and then cleansing his blood. Well, now AI is used to flag suspicious athletes who may be doping and to test them thoroughly. Injury prevention. AI helps prevent injuries. So my senior year, as I was saying, of high school, I busted my ankle really badly. I didn't even know if I was going to be able to play basketball again after that. I was playing in low-top shoes, which is a big no-no when you're playing basketball, and I didn't have any ankle support. So as Clark was saying earlier, I actually also have a business. I have a company called Upper Level Sports Academy. It's a college sports consultancy where I help guide parents through the athletic recruiting process. And what I see a lot is a lot of kids that are overtraining. Maybe they play like one sport, and burning out their muscle. And for example, I had like a parent who has a son who is a baseball pitcher, and he was pitching so much that he had to have like the Tommy John elbow surgery. We can use AI ethically to boost fan engagement and to create a more personalized experience for fans. So fans are a very important part of the athlete experience, whether we want to admit it or not. I remember playing college for the Wisconsin Badgers, and we were fourth in attendance that year, my senior year. We were pulling in like 16,000 fans per game. And of course, you hear those occasional stories of bad fans, like throwing stuff into the court and having bad behavior. But for the most part, right, fans are enthusiastic, and they can really make or break a team's reputation. So let's take a look at some professional sports AI use cases. So a few months ago, I actually went in for an appointment to see my doctor, and at a certain age, every woman has to get what's called like a mammogram that detects for breast cancer. And so I got this mammogram done, and my primary care physician actually called me like right away, immediately, and she says, yeah, Tonya, I see something in your test result. I would love for you to go see a genetics doctor. So I went and saw this genetics doctor, and she did this like family tree assessment on me, using predictive models, artificial intelligence, because there are certain types of diseases and cancers that run in my family, and my doctors were concerned about that. So I had to do this gene cancer testing, and I was totally freaking out, but thank goodness I did not have the gene for cancer. And so the reason I was telling that story is because there are new developments that are being used by cancer researchers that are being used, that they actually got from the NBA, the National Basketball Association. They're using tools that the NBA is using for artificial intelligence. So the NBA, the tool that they're using, so the NBA, they're using AI to determine how players are moving on the court and how they're interacting with each other, right? Basketball is all a game about movement and spacing. And so what they're doing is they're using artificial intelligence to analyze points or nodes with the use of a graph on NBA players not physically. I mean, I'm sure most of you probably know what graphs are, like a data structure, or they could be GNNs or graph neural networks, a branch of artificial intelligence. And so they're determining patterns of movement based on what's between the nodes in the graph. So for example, they can tell like which hand is best for dribbling and how players on the court interact with each other. They can possibly even find out the next best sports duo, like Shaq and Kobe, Jordan and Pippen. They might even be able to tell if the Chicago Bears will win another Super Bowl. So you can think of it like astronomy, or like the solar system, how the solar system interacts with different planets. And so how does AI help develop new cancer treatments similar to what the NBA is doing? So what the cancer researchers are doing, they're kind of modeling the NBA's tool, and they're using amino acids. So right, amino acids and proteins are the building blocks of life, and unfortunately, they're also the building blocks of cancer growth. So every cell in the body contains protein, and researchers are simulating how protein moves between amino acids and how they interact with each other. So they can determine which amino acid is involved and develop treatments based on the best path. So this is an example of a GNN, or a graph neural network, which is a subset of artificial intelligence. And the way it works is each node in the graph equals one amino acid, and so they're looking at how two amino acids are interacting and working together. And as you think about artificial intelligence, I mean, AI is such a big umbrella. It really encompasses many different things. So we can think of AI as being a machine imitating human behavior, and then machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence. Machine learning is a system that learns and improves from experience. Deep learning is a subset of machine learning, and deep learning is you take complex algorithms and neural networks to train models. What is artificial intelligence? Well, it is, I like to think of it as taking a computer, a robot, a machine, or software and making it think like the human mind. So an example of some type of artificial intelligence could be a smart speaker. You talk to it, you give it commands, it gives you real-time information back. You know, what is the weather? What is the score of the game? It also gives you real-time information. AI is also like self-driving cars, although that also uses deep learning. So you can think Tesla. What is machine learning? Machine learning learns from data and experience. So you take algorithms plus analytics, and you build these predictive models that solve business problems. So if we look kind of under the hood of machine learning, you know, you would just take past data, it would learn from that data, and it predicts some type of output. So prediction for machine learning, that is the key word. And there are, 7 steps in machine learning. We're not going to go through all of these, but we'll just go through a few. But let's say that we have a scenario where you're trying to determine whether, a sports ball is like a basketball or a football. So what you would do, you would go and collect the data, the features, the shapes, the colors. You would go out and buy the footballs and the basketballs. You'd plug them in. You'd gather the data. That's step number 1. Step number 2, data processing. You would choose a model. Then you would train your model or teach your model, which is basically finding patterns. And the model gets better with time. Testing your model, determining performance, tuning your model, and last but not least, getting a prediction or predicting which sports ball is which. And there's types of machine learning. There's something called supervised learning. And supervised learning is like, you may have also heard the term like labeled data. So supervised learning is we use known or labeled data for training data. So what would that look like? So for example, if we pass in known data, like we know this is a football, your machine learning algorithm would take in the known data, it would get processed, The data would get passed to the training model, which teaches the model to recognize a pattern. And once the model is trained based on the known data, you can use unknown data now, pass it into the model, and you can get a response. So the model tries to figure out whether the data is a football or another type of sports ball. There's another type of machine learning called unsupervised learning. And unsupervised learning is where the training data is unknown and unlabeled, meaning that no one has looked at the data before. So in unsupervised learning, you would take this unlabeled, unknown data. So let's say we're trying to predict the output of basketballs and footballs. So you would pass them that unknown data, like we don't know what it is. You would feed that data to the machine learning algorithm. Data is used to train or to teach the model. The data gets processed. And then the trained model tries to search for a pattern and give the desired response. And then it classifies the response into different groups. So examples of machine learning would include stock price prediction, right? Discovering the future value of a company's profits. Fraud analysis, studying patterns to identify fraud, often even before it happens. And so lastly, there's a subset of machine learning called deep learning, and that is inspired by the human brain, and it mimics the human brain and human behavior. And at the center of deep learning, there's something called neural networks. And neural networks take in data. They train themselves to recognize patterns and predict the output for a new set of similar data. And so the neural network within deep learning, the neural networks are doing all the work. And neural networks are based on layers. So there's like a hidden layer, an input layer which accepts input from the data. There's a hidden layer which does all the calculations and the computations. There's an output layer which predicts the expected output. And so some people like to think of it like the human brain, like the neural networks, but I kind of liken it to a Big Mac, right? Like when Big Macs were created or invented, I'm sure there's a lot of market research done. And they were getting input from customers, so that's the input layer. And the hidden layer is like the secret sauce, right? Everybody knows that Big Macs have the secret sauce. We don't know what's in the sauce, but I'm sure we do now. And the output, if you eat a Big Mac, you're probably going to get a stomach ache. That's the prediction. Deep learning, a little bit under the hood, like how it works. So let's say we create a neural network to tell the difference between shapes, like square, circle, triangle. So what happens is each pixel is fed as input to the input layer and given a weighted sum. And so the hidden layer does the calculations and the computations, and it's given a bias score, and the output layer is given a probability score, and the highest probability is that predicted output. And you usually take the highest probability that you get. So examples of deep learning would be like neural networks used to detect cancer from MRI images. And also facial recognition, which is like estimating the age of a person based on facial features. But you know, facial recognition is definitely a controversial technique. Just watch out for that. I'm sure you guys have probably heard some of the things that are going on with facial recognition, some of the controversy that's going on with it in the news. So NFL, now we have some football fans here. Let's look at a use case. So everybody knows, I think, about the concussion crisis in the NFL. It's been going on for years, but I would say over the last 10 years, there's been more awareness raised about we want to decrease concussions in our NFL players. So what the NFL is doing now is they're using TV images, using like computer vision, combined with like putting sensors on a player's like helmet, shoulder pads, mouth guard, to determine how fast and in what direction a player's head moves with the helmet after contact, and this is helping to decrease concussions and injuries. The NFL is also taking data to increase their understanding of injuries. So, for example, they're taking factors like weather. Is there data, or there might be data, that says that in the wintertime, during the season, players get hurt more? Or are they getting more hurt in the summertime when they're overtraining and training for their season? Player activity. How many minutes played? So that would be an example of, if a player is playing more minutes, are they more at a risk to get hurt? Equipment choices. If you watched the last Super Bowl, OBJ, Odell Beckham Jr., he was wearing gold cleats. That was the first time he ever wore those shoes. He was playing on artificial turf, and he ended up tearing his ACL. Speeds. There are certain positions in football that are faster. For example, wide receivers, cornerbacks, running backs are typically the fastest players on the field, and there may be data around that says the fastest players are getting hurt more. So they're taking all that combined data, and what they're doing is they're using these virtual environments. And so they're using in-game scenarios to understand player health and safety. So for example, if a player gets hurt, they get a concussion, they walk off the field. The NFL is creating this digital replica of NFL athletes in a virtual environment. So they're using machine learning and computer vision to pinpoint and impact when injuries are happening. And this helps them find a way to improve player safety. So computers understand how many times a player hits their helmet during the game and helps find a way to reduce helmet-to-helmet contact. Speech-to-text sports use cases. So why would you even use speech-to-text? So I think a few reasons would be it helps with complex work. So if you have a sports journalist who's always writing long-form articles, that could be very time-consuming. It saves time, so there's really no need as much anymore to gather stats manually because AI can do that for you. It's boring. It frees up sports journalists to work on more creative and interesting work. It's faster, provides faster insights. Does anybody here play fantasy sports? Yeah, me too. I love fantasy sports. So fantasy sports, right? You can now get your fantasy sports stats prepared by AI in seconds. It's also good for storytelling, right? You get data back, text back. You can do things with that data, make it more visual, and be creative, inspiring, increasing fan engagement. So the company I work for, Deepgram, we are an AI speech-to-text company, and we transcribe audio to text. So in our mission at Deepgram is every voice is heard and understood. And what we do is we transcribe real-time or like live streaming audio to text. We also transcribe pre-recorded audio to text, so think uploading a file. And we support 40-plus audio formats. We have many different features, but just to name a few, we have a language feature. We support many different languages like English, Indian English, Chinese, French, Portuguese, Ukrainian, and many more. We have a diarization feature, which picks up multiple speakers in a transcript. We also have a search feature, so you can search for terms or phrases in a transcript. I think a use case of that would be like if you had a phone call with customer service and they say this call may be recorded for quality assurance purposes. That's a legally binding term, so you could search for that type of phrase in the transcript. And so with speech-to-text, you get something back called unstructured data, which is a huge opportunity right now because 95% of companies say that they have a need for help determining and making sense of their unstructured data. So you can think of unstructured data as being more qualitative and structured data being more quantitative. Structured data, we'll take a look at that first, is easily understood by the machine and highly organized. You can think of structured data as being used with a traditional database. So for example, rows in a table having like name, email, phone number, stats, points per game, rebounds per game, assists per game, etc. Unstructured data, you would use a NoSQL database, And it would pretty much hold everything else that the structured data won't hold, like text from like an email message, a transcript, text transcript, and rich media sources like video and audio. And like I was saying, it's a good problem. 95% of businesses need help managing unstructured data, so it's a huge opportunity. So some speech-to-text use cases in AI would be automated sports journalism. And AI creates news stories with little human intervention now with this type of sports journalism that's automated, and it's increasing. For example, the Associated Press uses it in minor league and major league baseball games, and it helps them create more content and cover more games. Visual storytelling, combining artificial intelligence with machine learning, where you have real-time stats, or like data, plus visual elements like graphs, charts, to help you increase viewer engagement. And it helps sports commentators better analyze and visualize the game. So some examples of visual sports would be instant highlights, speech to text, using speech like real-time speech to text transcription. For example, you could tag a commentator's keywords and create highlights instantly from the sports games. Instant discoverable footage, making footage discoverable instantly in real-time speech. And last but not least, graphics. Real-time graphics. Think of, if you're watching a sports game, using live transcription, tagging whatever the sports commentator says, and have like on-screen graphics of the current state of the game. And so when you think of speech to text, you may think of like natural language processing and or NLP, which is a little different than sentiment analysis. I think we sometimes get those mixed up. So what NLP is, or natural language processing is, it helps computers to understand human language. And sentiment analysis helps understanding human emotions. So NLP is kind of at the intersection of like computer science, AI, and human languages. And it helps machines understand and derive meaning from human languages. So how does NLP work? So let's say we have this sentence: Michael Jordan is playing basketball, comma, one of the all-time greats. And actually, raise your hand if you think Michael Jordan is the GOAT, actually. Yeah, me too. Okay, so let's say we have that sentence. So the first step in NLP is called segmentation. That's where you segment by punctuation. So we would segment on that comma, and we would divide the sentences into meaningful parts. Step 2 would be tokenization. So we just take each word in the sentence and separate them out into something called tokens. We need these tokens individually so the computer can understand what we're passing in. Step 3, removing stop words. So we're just removing words that really have no meaning. So like is, a, and, the, we're taking out those words. Step 4 is stemming, and step 5 is lemmatization, which is pretty much the same type of procedure. What it does, it just gets the root stem word. Step 6, parts of speech tagging. This is where you tag words by parts of speech like noun, verb, adjective, so the machine can understand. And last but not least, you have step 7, which is called name entity tagging, where you're flagging names of people, locations, organizations. So for example, we have here Michael Jordan, person, Bulls, organization, Chicago, location. So we're classifying words into subcategories. So sentiment analysis is a type of natural language processing, but it's performed, it's performed on text data, like a transcript, and it determines if text is like positive, neutral, negative. So it's kind of used to pick up the human emotion. That's why it's called sentiment analysis. And it's used in sports to detect feelings of a sports broadcaster. So, for example, is there gender bias when a sports broadcaster is commenting? is their racial bias. It helps to discover patterns in their emotions. So for example, does anybody watch the show Skip and Shannon Undisputed? It's like on FS1, it's a sports show. And Skip Bayless, he loves mentioning certain players more than others. So for example, he mentioned LeBron James, I think, in one segment 50 times. So let's look at college use cases. I remember when I was in college, it was my last year of college actually, and my teammates and friends were telling me, they were like, hey, you know, there's like this new website, you need to check it out. You can like connect with your friends and look at their pictures and connect with people you haven't seen in years. So I go to this website and I'm like, oh, I already have a friend on there. And the friend's name was Tom. And of course I'm talking about MySpace. And I'm so happy that I kind of missed like the first wave of social media when I was in college. I don't know how I would have used social media when I was in college. But nowadays, Division I college athletes especially are using social media to make money. So there's something called name, image, likeness, or NIL, where you can profit off of your name, image, likeness now as a college athlete. So just for perspective, when I was in college, like you couldn't work as an athlete. You can only work out of season. And out of season for women's basketball was only 3 months. So name, image, likeness is a new law that was passed that college athletes can make money now. For example, there's a really good women's basketball player at UConn. She makes $64,000 per social media post. The quarterback at Alabama, University of Alabama, he's a sophomore. Last year's freshman year, he raked in $1 million of NIL money. So when I was in college, I was eating ramen noodles, but nowadays, these kids are eating filet mignon. So NIL, name, image, likeness, athletes can make money from jersey sales, right? Royalties, video games, sponsorships, endorsements, promotions. I think it's a good thing. I mean, it is controversial. I think it is a good thing because I think it opens up the room for other sports or other like what they're called like equivalency sports or non-revenue producing sports to make money, like swimming, softball, rowing, soccer, etc. So a use case for NIL, you can leverage game contact. So building a social media presence for athletes. So for example, a game ends at 6 p.m. AI solutions with the highlights of that game are available ASAP. Sponsorships with paid partnerships, partnering with companies. Athletes can now partner with companies like Gatorade to promote products and services on social media, like TikTok, Instagram. Commercial use, right? Athletes can do ads now for companies, vlogs, testimonials, and get paid for that. It's like a product endorsement. So there's like these AI solutions now for NIL, name, image, likeness. They're like marketplaces where they connect and match student athletes to the best brands and brands to the best student athlete influencers. There's an AI platform now that uses they take social media posts, videos, images, photos from college athletes. They plug them into their AI platform. They take different factors like demographics, age, gender, location, psychographics, personality, contextual relevance, like have these athletes mention them, or have they mentioned their competitors? And so they're aligning their brands to college athletes, and at the click of a button, these brands are getting matched to college athletes using artificial intelligence. Youth sports. So when I was a senior in high school, I was the fifth best ranked girls basketball prospect in the country. And back when I was playing, the way that they would do the rankings is they would rank us manually. So you'd have these committees and college coaches. They would travel all around the country, literally ranking players. And they would put it in this book. It was called the Blue Book. And what they would do is they would mail this book out to all the coaches, out to all the high school coaches, anybody who wanted this book of all the players ranked. So that was the old way. Well, enter 2020, the pandemic happened, and unfortunately, a lot of college coaches were not able to travel to recruit players. So it really invented some really cutting-edge technology in the recruiting space. And now most players are getting recruited via video. That's at least where it starts. So college coaches really don't have to travel as much anymore, or they shouldn't have to. And I think it also helps with athletes in high school who maybe have fallen through the cracks, or maybe they come from like a small city, or they come from a small school and they're not getting as much exposure. So way back when I was in high school, the way you got exposure, if you weren't being ranked, is you would send in your VHS tapes, snail mail, to a college coach. You know, that would take 2 weeks. The college coach would get the video, look at the video, they'd send you a letter back, you send them a letter back, so it was really, really slow. So now there's game-changing techniques using artificial intelligence on how we are ranking athletes now in high school. So they're using computer vision to track movements during competitions, and machine learning to evaluate skill and potential. So I think this is great, as I was saying, for overlooked players, maybe who come from a small city, a small school, and they're not getting the exposure. And what this AI is doing is they're classifying athletes into archetypes. So for example, in hockey, right, like they're splitting forwards into subcategories like offensive forward, power forward, defensive forward. Another cutting-edge piece of artificial intelligence that's being used in high school sports, or like youth sports, I mean, you know, even first grade, second grade, third grade, is something called automated assisted cameras. And what it does is it records athletes competing. And so coaches and players can analyze, and these cameras help improve skill, right? They give you, or give the athletes, tips on how to improve their skill level, how to develop as players, and personalize highlights. So parents who are recording their kids playing sports might not have to do that as much anymore. So some opportunities for you, if you're ever interested in building an application for sports and AI. So pro sports, right? I would say a big opportunity there is enhancing performance. Because I think at the pro sports level, well, I know at the pro sports level, you are expected to perform. College sports. Has anybody heard of the transfer portal in college sports? Yes, lots of college athletes are transferring now. It's happening a lot, so there's a lot of opportunity to build something around the transfer portal. And the transfer portal is just a database of athletes who want to transfer, and so there's insights that are needed for college coaches for them to pick the best athlete on their team, and for student athletes, for them to pick the best school. And for youth sports, I would say anything that has to do with player development and mental health would be great as well. So in closing, I just want to say, my sports career was kind of filled with a little bit of anxiety just because I was so young when I kind of came on the scene. I was 13 when I started getting recruited, and I have a memory of when I was 14 as a freshman playing at the Wisconsin basketball state tournament. I had a really good tournament. I remember after the game, a news camera ran up to me and stuck a camera in my face with a microphone. So my life became very public. I went from being very private to very public very quickly, with college coaches evaluating you at tournaments and dealing with the sports media. And I just feel like young kids now have so much pressure with social media. I can't imagine having social media when I was younger. I know a lot of athletes are using it as well. So each level of sports, youth, college, pro sports, there's more pressure and there's more expectation. It's almost like you're expected to perform like a machine. But athletes are not Terminators. Athletes are human. So we need to support athletes and create opportunities for athletes. Think about a 10-year-old who maybe plays basketball and she's shooting with the wrong form. What if it's not fixed? And she goes years shooting that same way. right? That could be devastating. Your goals and dreams could be shattered. So I encourage athletes, I encourage people to build something, with sports and athletes to help support our athletes in their goals to become the best. And so I want to thank everybody for being here today. I want to thank that conference, and come find me in the hallway if you want to chat.
Hello. You're supposed to get these out.
Oh. I gave one out.
Yeah, you got your hand up. You just raised it. Here you go. Yeah, you. See, easiest giveaway ever. Oh, did I get it through? Dang it, so close. We got to work for this next one. How about this? Ooh, sorry, we're starting to yell. How awesome would it be to just clear the tables in here and have just epic 3-on-3 just basketball tournament? Should we do that? Yeah, we'll call it an open space. Open hoop.
Space.
Let's see. How can we do this? What would be a good way to do this?
That's a good question.
Let's go with who has been to, oh, that little man's got his hand up now, I feel guilty. Do you want it, little man? Or do you got a question? I'm a sucker. All right. For the big kids in the room. Are there any Bears fans in here? Oh, now there's more. You're a Packers fan and you live in Green Bay. No. I'm shunning you. What's that? Browns. I believe you all beat us last year. We're really at the bottom of the heap. Who's hosted their first open space? Okay, I saw your hand first back there. Yep. All right, let's give Tonya a big round of applause. This was her first keynote ever.
Thank you.
You can leave it.
I can leave it. Oh,
Yeah.
This is mine, actually.
I'll take it home later. I work for you? No, well, that went fast. Hope you pay better than I pay me. When I think about where we're going or trying to go with, well, that didn't work well. Where we're trying to go with that.us and trying to connect people and trying to grow you, on your shirt where it says a lifetime of learning. I look for people like Tonya and others of you here for the real practitioner who can guide me in a way that will help me do it better, right? I'm not trying to learn on my own how to do this stuff. I'm trying to learn from you so that I can get it done faster, ultimately get those features to you. So I'm super humbled and proud. I've been working with Tonya now for the past, 6 months, if you will, to get ready to be up here. And it's so cool to just meet cool people day in and day out. And again, she ended up here because she took a step, okay? Let's give her one more round of applause. Please check her out afterwards in an open space. I got to do the housekeeping things today. Of course, open spaces, open all day. They don't necessarily have to happen over there, right? They can happen everywhere. I ended up in one kind of just in the middle of this that came out of nowhere. The family track is still going on. How many people were messing around with the marble wall? Yeah, buddy. What the hell happened over here? There's a conference center over there with stuff going on. Y'all know that? No? cool. That fell flat. I'm just going to be on this side of the stage for now. We did a number of interviews yesterday, so thank you to the folks that did that. You may see me in the hallway try to track you down. We got some stuff in the trading post. Help me clear that stuff out, and I appreciate your support. Again, huge sponsors, or huge shout out to the sponsors. CUNY Mutual Group, Unspecified, which in fact is a real company. It's my day job. Core BTS, all the folks below, and on top of that, all of these folks as well. We can't do any of this without them. I appreciate their support, their creativity. There's a lot of work that goes into getting here. You know it. You've been visiting them. Keep talking to them. Let's give them a huge round of applause. We're going to have a quick raffle at 12:15. Core BTS is going to do their raffle. It'll be in here during lunch, just a few minutes to say a couple words, give away some stuff. Afterwards, I just got 2 brand new computers up here that I may give away too. It looks like a Deepgram, and this is well, we won't give that one away. I'm kidding. I'm not going to give away Tonya's laptops. But come around in 12:15, or during lunch, we'll give a raffle away. With that, enjoy your day. Closing, we got all kinds of stuff to raffle off. We'll go as quick as we can through that, and go get your learn on. All right? Thank you.